In a world of EMS podcasters, EMS Office Hours is the only live podcast bringing you the latest topics and opinions in EMS. Turn down your scanner and turn up your speakers as we join Jim Hoffman and Josh Knapp on their latest EMS podcasting journey.
Hey, welcome to EMS Office Hours. Doing another little Facebook Live episode today. This is Jim Hoffman.
Josh Knapp.
Dave Brenner.
Guys, thanks for joining me. We might have another guest popping in here if they're able to make it. I had invited the union president for FDNY EMS to join us. It was the basis of part of what we want to talk about today, which was the article. I think it was New York One. Josh, I'm not sure if you have that article. I'm going to send that to you real quick so that you have it. You can just take a quick look at it.
At the top of my email, that'd be great. Thank you.
What's that?
In the chat?
Yeah, I'm going to put in the chat. Don't watch the video because it'll, there's a video there, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
But don't,
No.
Do you need it, Dave, or no?
Sure, send it to me too.
So anyway, thanks for joining, guys. I appreciate you guys popping in here. If you're watching us live on Facebooks, of course, I always try to remind people, please hit the like button below, the share button, let other people know about the podcast, what we're talking about. It really does help get the show out there and other people see it, especially when you think about Facebook and how fast your feed goes. When you like it or you hate it, you give me a frowny face, a like, whatever it is, it actually keeps it up a little higher, a little bit longer, and lets other people get a chance to see it. And of course, if you're watching on Facebook, you can share it as well with your coworkers and anybody else you think might be interested in the show, even the specific topic we're talking about. So today I wanted to, Dave, last week we ended, and I was talking a little bit about, the issues with some of the protests and stuff like that, and how EMS is kind of at risk with, not having protective gear and, not being trained in tactical EMS and stuff like that. And then you had mentioned an article you saw on NewYork1.com, and it talked about the need for mental health support for EMTs and paramedics, specifically in New York City. But I think it goes a little bit beyond New York, because I think now you've got COVID is nationwide, of course, and I think other areas that are getting hit a little harder, the spike in cases, or even when they had a higher spike before, even like New Jersey, stuff like that, who had higher, patient counts, it affected them as well. So the president of the FDNY union, the local 2507, the Oren Barzile, I believe is how you say his name. He talked about how, EMS personnel really can suffer from PTSD, and where there's, even when they're taking their own lives. And I think both of us, all three of us, have seen sort of I don't know if it's just a coincidence or whatever, but I've seen, personally, a bunch of people that have committed suicide in New York because, I guess, of the PTSD from this. And, he pointed out that there's more than 1,000 EMS personnel in New York that have contracted the virus. So I want to kind of, I watched the video that was there before the show, and he talks about how there's not that much support being offered to the, EMTs and medics that are in New York City, that he feels there should be a sort of a dedicated kind of line just for them that offers support. But he mentions about how he feels the support should be more by people that are trained in sort of PTSD and war zone type, I guess, mental health. I guess people who have maybe helped, soldiers and military in the past, and now he wants those type of people to be on the support line, not just somebody who does like, domestic dispute type stuff and family counseling and things like that. He's looking to have people that are more trained specifically for, a wartime type environment. So I'm wondering what you guys think about that, what you've seen on your end. I'm sure we all pay different attention to different things on Facebook and social media and stuff when it comes to, the stressors that are happening with EMS personnel. So I'm just wondering where you guys stand on that. What do you guys think?
Well, did you want to start? You can start, Josh. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave. I start usually just
Okay.
because I have a big mouth.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, certainly COVID brought a lot of additional stress to EMS, to everybody, but certainly EMS folks on the front line, the ones out there taking care of people, what it has done to them. And the union president pointed this out. I think he said that the number of the daily cardiac arrests at the peak of the virus pandemic in New York, they were seeing 4 times as many cardiac arrests,
right,
than they were seeing in the past. And when you see a lot of death, you don't need to have just one death. We all think about PTSD coming from an event, but that's not necessarily the case. There are events, and then there's cumulative stress. So when you're dealing with COVID-19, not only the cumulative number of cases that you see, and there's so many sick people that you see, and there's so many stressed out providers that you see, but I know providers who are out there, and they're out there because they need the money. The good news is their jobs didn't get shut down, but then they got to go out and do their job, and they want to go home to their families, but they don't want to bring home whatever it is they might have gotten exposed to intentionally, not so much intentionally, but unintentionally, maybe because of the shortage of PPE in the beginning, maybe just because things are unknown, and it creates a tremendous amount of stress. Some of our EMS providers are part of homes where there may be multiple providers multiple breadwinners, them being one of them, and the other one is now out of work. Right. And it's expensive to live in New York City. It's like impossible to live in New York City as a 40-hour-a-week EMT. So they're getting hit with all this economic stress, all of this awful pandemic stress, and personal stress. I mean, we all know that domestic violence went up. We all know that child abuse, which is just a particular form of domestic violence, went up. Everybody's experiencing additional stress of all sorts. And you put that on top of people like us who go out there and see more dead, more stress, watching our colleagues, as he pointed out, 1,000 EMS folks in New York City got COVID-19. When you see that, it really hits home. It really creates a tremendous amount of stress, and we know that they've had more suicides. And suicide, it's like cardiac arrest. We know what happens when you get a heart attack and die. You die because you had cardiac arrest. But you can have a heart attack and live. So we got all these people out there who have the stress. So I'm comparing the heart attack to stress. And I'm putting the cardiac arrest tantamount to suicide. But we have all of these folks out there who didn't die, who are still trying to put things together, and they still have the stress. And I can tell you that New York City has failed to provide systematic support to all of its EMS folks and other folks too. I'm sure there are other folks that aren't getting the support that they need. But if you went to New York City, REMSCO and REMAC and say, hey, what's the plan? Give me a list of all of your critical incident stress providers. The list, if they had it, would be about 3 people. And when was the last time they met? It would be years.
Yeah.
And what financial support do we have to guarantee this? And I suspect it's Zippo. I mean, the fire department might have additional resources, may or may not. But I think for EMS in general, in my county, there is a support system, free support system, and the number to call 24/7. But I don't know where it is all over. And, I don't think my county is representative of everywhere.
David, that number that you call, is that for anybody or is that specific to the EMS fire personnel where you are?
It's for EMS fire personnel.
And is it internal, or is it like through the actual county itself? Like they provide?
It's
something?
it's through the county. It's through I believe Remsco has a lot to do with it. The Regional Emergency Medical Service Council has a lot to do with it. At one time, I was a member of it, but that was many years ago. I went on the Flight 800 events, and I went on specific events where EMS folk were hurting. Sometimes they were big events, sometimes they were just individual events. And by the way, people were told you didn't need to have an event. You just needed to need them if you needed them. So where is that number? I mean, there are national numbers. I'm going to tell you that people have done studies of these national. A colleague of mine has gone out to look at all of the resources all over the place. And some places are plush with resources and support, and some places are not.
So
Some places they just refer you to people that are therapists. That doesn't mean they take your insurance or that you could even afford them.
Yeah.
So where I was going to start out with was, look, EMS is in crisis, right? I mean, we've discussed this multiple times. It's fairly easy to see, and I think the last trailing indicator are suicides or just issues on the job. It's not, I was also a critical incident stress, trained in critical incident stress debriefing. And this is around the time when I got involved in this, when I officially became EMS. I've been involved in public service since the late 90s, but, there was just something about my volunteering at the World Trade Center that pushed me further into the public sector, and I joined EMS. At that time, there was a great concern with the idea that every New Yorker was the walking wounded. Every New Yorker was affected by this. And yes, but the thing that we're not sort of paying attention to is the cumulative stress that comes down onto EMS and public service that is harder to put a thumbtack in and say, it was this event that caused these people. There was that unique aspect, and we're still discovering it now. I mean, there was just a story out in today's news about a high school football player or a college football player who got COVID and then was admitted into the ED. And next thing you know, his career is over because he now has permanent heart damage. I mean, we're seeing these effects afterwards. And when you see body after body after body, and there's no control that you have, you're really calling the jobs to pronounce somebody who was just alive. And this is what I've heard from the field, that it was the frustration. And that frustration adds to that cumulative, I don't have a solution to that. When a person who generally fixes stuff comes in and says, I don't have a solution to that, that's stress. And the stress is, what you and I have seen, Dave, from our training is multiplied by incidences that mimic that stress. And then it again gains power when you don't have an answer to how to deflect that. So, what we saw in that video with the union rep was a cry out. And the frustrating part here is it's not a unique cry out. We've heard this before. And the question is, do we learn this time? Do we do anything to take care of our membership this time? Or do we do, those half-hearted measures? Because I remember, everybody that was involved in my class in the critical incident stress debriefing, we were all gung-ho. We were all wanted to fix our partners, fix our friends, and fix our brotherhood, sisterhood community of first responders. But we weren't given a vehicle to go and do that. We were given some training. Training was sort of more for administrators to say, see, we're doing the training, than for actual results.
And isn't that a big part of a lot of this, right? Even, with what's available now, what they say, there's places you can call, but they're not trained to deal with what the issues people are having. So it's like you said, Josh, it's almost like they kind of do it almost just to kind of appease, the cry out, and they kind of hope that by the time shit gets real, it's going to kind of be past, and it's going to be over with. But this is taking longer. It's dragging on, and and people are now, the providers, it's that cumulative, issues where now they need help, and then you've got this union, president here, and he's crying out for that help, but you have to wonder what help is actually going to be coming. I mean, I know a guy who is a bus driver in New York City, and he's dealing with the same sort of stress. You know what I mean? His members and stuff are having the same issues of getting support for what they need as MTA workers. So it's not just EMS. And Dave had mentioned, like, you got this large city, and it's like they're not paying attention to the people that are out there every day being exposed to it. And whether you believe in masks or not masks or distancing or whatever, the reality is that you can get it. And I feel like there's, like, a city like New York should be more on top of helping the people that are out there, putting themselves at risk every day.
So I wanted to follow up on something that you were talking about in the beginning when you spoke about a person with military background. One of the things you don't want, and unfortunately that's what some of these referral services do, they refer you to a social worker or a psychologist or a counselor, who's willing to take your insurance. One of the things we did early on in Suffolk, and again, not the model for the whole nation, but what we did was the only people we included on our team and the only referrals we would make would be to people who clearly understood, who see what we see, who understand so if they didn't have military experience, EMS experience, fire, law enforcement experience, we're not sending it to them. We're not sending it to a person who studied, social works and they did their internship in a marriage counseling clinic, or they and not putting down the need for marriage counseling, or psychotherapy for people who have other disorders. Yeah, I want to tell you a story that I read a very long time ago. Oh my gosh, a very long time ago, when we first started doing critical incident stress, oh my God, my phone won't shut up. And this was the story. There was one of these train crashes in Virginia about 25, 30 years ago. Josh, you remember it. And what happened was, there might have been some hazmat set up, and fire departments and EMS converged onto the scene, and they set up this relatively remote incident command, and everybody's fighting there. And this guy who was in the neighborhood, who lived there, he was a clinical psychologist. He worked his way over, he got to the incident command, and he said, listen, I'm a clinical psychologist. If you need my help, if anybody, just let me know. And the incident commander said, wow, that's great to know. Thank you very much. And he was one of the resources in the back of this guy's head. And then at one point, this guy comes in and he says, listen, we have a problem. One of our guys is stuck on the train. And the incident, what do you mean? Is he trapped? What's going on? No, he went in on the train, was on its side, upside down, whatever it was. And he ended up standing on somebody's hand, and he can't move. He got got paralyzed. He had, fight, fright, freeze. He was frozen. So he says, I got just the guy for you, the incident commander says, and he sends it. He sends him back with the clinical psychologist. 15 minutes later, they come back and listen. We got 2 guys stuck on this train.
Yeah, right.
It sounds like a joke. It wasn't a joke.
Yeah.
No, it's
They
not.
weren't prepared to see what the first awesome thing you see like this should not be the real thing. You know,
But it's not even. So there's 2 ends to that. The first horrible introduction to our world for somebody uninitiated from the outside shouldn't be bang, drop them into our world. At the same time, the concept behind critical incident stress debriefing is to have somebody that can truly empathize and be respected by the audience, that they empathize, that they've been there, seen this, and this is, sort of a teaching moment of this was my way out. I saw the same things you have. I understand your emotions around this. Let's go through it together, and to have sort of that trained guide instead of the locals who just want to take advantage of the tourists and say, yeah, pay me and I'll take you through this. This is where John Lennon is buried.
Yeah.
There's that sort of craziness, and the aspect of having the initiated as these with a more training to understand how to navigate some of these emotional feelings that are going around was a good idea in concept. But then we get back to the whole thing about execution. I mean, look at what the cops are going through right now. I mean, I absolutely am there for that. Part of our system is broken and we're not doing it right. But if you were sort of out there in law enforcement, I could see how you can feel that the whole world has turned against you. Now you're going out with the acknowledgement that you are risking your life day to day to do this job for the better part of the public good, and now you have the public against you. That's going to make anything. I mean, any counselor is going to struggle with that because they're not going to have anything to latch onto. It's never happened before like this.
And it's funny you say that too, Josh, right? You think about even with, I know we talk about New York, because this is an article we're speaking about that was in the New York, New York One, website. But you think about how they had talked about early on about taking people who just graduated EMT school and they're going to get them out into the field. They've never seen anything. Right, they haven't been exposed to grandma at the nursing home 100 times yet. Right, never mind getting thrown into a situation like we're talking about, where you've got a day full of multiple cardiac arrest calls, and you're pronouncing all those calls. And then you have the issue as well of, I was thinking too about the people that came from other states that came to New York to help. Right, they're done helping. They sent them back to whatever state they came from. Now, what's happened to those people? What is their stress levels like? What is their PTSD like? Are they getting help where they are? Are they able to reach out to people in New York that that are providing it because of the COVID thing, and they fall under the umbrella of that support group? And you have to wonder about that. I mean, I was trying to look up other states and what they do for the EMS person. I couldn't find anything that was specific, to it. And then I was thinking early on in the podcast when you guys were talking, I was thinking about 9/11 and what was available then for people. How did people get past that end of it? Because you have people say, well, this is your job. You don't. What is with all this PTSD and looking for, a safe zone to go into and cry your woes about what you saw? You saw dead people. Well, this is your job. You're supposed to see dead people. You're supposed to, deal with emergencies. And if you can't, and all of a sudden, because you've been going, 2 years in your job doing basic boo-boo calls and basic calls and chest pain call, and nothing really major ever happened. And now all of a sudden something major happens and you're overwhelmed. And it's like, okay, well, what did you think was going to eventually happen in this job? It's like 90% of what we do is BS, right? We all acknowledge that, but when that 1% of something that actually happens severely, where we get overwhelmed as individuals, as a system, that's the job. And you'll have people who say, well, what are you crying about? What did you think was going to happen when you became an EMS? What did you think it was going to be? It was going to be just giving people Band-Aids and splinting arms, eventually.
Delivering babies.
But isn't that part of our world, our culture? Shake it off, get up, shake it off, do the next job. Yeah. Get up, take a moment, smoke a cigarette, and do the next job.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it was when I started. When I started, I was barely on the job for 2 days, and I had my first I don't want to even child death. I mean, that's like, and everybody sort of came around me and were like, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Because they sort of reckoned back to their days when they first started.
And Josh, it's like you just mentioned, right? The people that are doing the support, if they're not in EMS, fire, police, and they can't relate to that, right? So how do you, like Dave was mentioning too, how do you connect with that person to try to give you support on something that they've never been exposed to? For me, I've never had a major issue like that. But I always knew that my coworkers that have been through similar things could sympathize with what I had gone through, and that alone helped me, knowing that I had coworkers that I could kind of lean on. I never had to reach out to, to a formal support thing. And looking back, I'm kind of crazy now, so maybe I should have reached out to some of the stuff, but at the time, my coworkers were the ones that kind of helped me push through. You do a little dark humor, you do a little pat on the back, like you said, you have a cigarette or whatever, and then you get back on the truck and you keep going.
And you just keep on going, right?
Yeah, and I think that's what when you look at these systems, I think that's what they want us to do. And I think in this case, you've got people who are of the mindset of, I need more than that. I need, something different, because I seriously had PTSD and like we said earlier in the show, that people are actually committing suicide, because of it.
Think about when PTSD came into the vernacular. I mean, we really didn't. PTSD was really, it had names. Look at it back in the World War II. What was it called? Shell shocked.
Right.
World War I, right? So there was this recognition that psychological battle injury was a real thing. But when did it come to EMS? When was it really recognized for EMS? And I could probably argue that, not until the 90s. When was the Edward R. Burrow, the federal office building with Timothy McVeigh? 92?
Oh my God, I don't know.
I know Dave's
that was
I think I was in the Army. That was a long time ago.
I think that was around 92.
So do you recall that, was it 3 months after? So we all recall the picture of the firefighter coming out of the building with a limp, 18-month-old body, right? Horrible. Truly, not anything any of us want to be in that position. And then, it made all the papers and everything else. And then what was it? 3 months later, he killed himself. And then his partner another year, and then they're saying, we really need to do something because the crisis itself was so impactful that this guy never recovered. He was depressed from then on out. So this isn't anything new.
Yeah.
But it seems that our tactic in dealing with it is certainly not old either.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're kind of getting at in the show today, and I think that's what even the union president is talking about, is that they're doing the same thing that they've been doing, instead of trying to put things in place that are more specific to the workers and the environment that we're in, and just kind of doing the same type of thing, expecting that to really help. But we're in a different environment altogether, and the resources that are there for EMS workers, and again, this is specifically for New York, they're not there at the level that they should be. They're not there for the personnel that reach out, and they're not getting the right kind of help with that. And I don't think it's being recognized by the city itself. And I think that's where the major kind of issue is. They said even before, I mean, the union president had said in the article that even before COVID-19 hit, like you said, Josh, it's nothing new as far as what they're doing now, right? Before COVID-19 hit, they were asking for more counseling services, more peer support stuff, right? Because they
knew it was coming down the line,
that there was issues happening on, right? They knew that there was going to be after effects of that, and they knew what that workers in New York City and probably, I'm sure, a lot of other major cities, PTSD is there, and they need to, it's being seen every day with their membership, and he says this again, like you said, there's something set up for them already, right? There's something already in place for them to call. There's hotlines for them to call, but the idea of, as we mentioned again, so just say one more time, is that the counselors that they're reaching are not counselors that are specifically trained and with experience to deal with PTSD, and people that are familiar with EMS and fire and police and military, and that are trained to deal with these types of incidents.
I wanted to add, I agree with everything that we've all been talking about, and the stress in EMS. But I do want to add, there's an operational component to help reduce some of the stress that we experience. Like a pediatric code. That's a horrifying event. And there is a recommendation. Now, I don't think they could have implemented this in the midst of the peak pandemic, but when you have a significant event, an event that has affected you really, really strongly, there is sound recommendation for us, okay, that minimally the responder be relieved of duty for 1 hour and no more than 24 hours. Minimally 1 hour off. You work a code or you work an event that has hurt you so badly, and it's not something that you're going to tap into every day. I can remember about 4 or 5 events where in my career that I could name that this is what should have happened. That you take off, you get relief, paid. If you're working, your boss says you're taking off for an hour. Don't worry, we'll get somebody to cover for you, but you're taking off for at least an hour. If you need the day, just let me know. This is it should practically be codified as workman's comp. Right? You just experienced something that you need to take off. I know you twisted your ankle, work it off, work it out. We twisted your brain, and your brain needs the time to adapt for it, and you need at least an hour, and it shouldn't even be optional. No boss, no, and somebody, you can tell when they're working if they're working a pediatric code. Most people are not really good at hiding their emotional component with this. Some people are. I cry during those events, so I'm not really good at hiding it at all. You're off for at least an hour. Don't tell me I could take this broken leg. Forget about the broken leg. You're not going to the broken leg call. You're done. You're done. You're going to take off for an hour, and I don't care what you do. Watch TV, take a nap, call somebody on the phone minimally. That doesn't mean you're not going to have more significant trauma and need more time off. But this is a sound recommendation from the research from a woman named Halpern, who has done some terrific critical incident stress and stress research for EMS folks. So if you were to Google Halpern, Halpern, and CISM and EMS, you would pull up some of the references to the original articles, and they're good. They're good.
Well, you know what? I want to end it there, guys. I know, Dave, you got to run. But one thing I like what you said there, Dave, and I think that is actually a whole nother podcast on that, because I have some thoughts. I know if I start talking about it, it's going to roll us into another hour, another hour show. So I want to end it there, guys. Thanks for jumping in. I think that we covered the topic pretty good, and I'm hoping that, you know, maybe other people are going to see this and realize that there's something more to it than just some hotline that you have no idea what that person at the other end is trained for. I think members of EMS, no matter what city you're in, what town you're in, that if you have a hotline that's supposed to be to help you with, you know, stress, or you're looking for peer support, that when you call that hotline, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get somebody who's trained specifically for PTSD, specifically knows about what you're doing. Again, it doesn't have to be another EMS, you know, person. It could be a firefighter, it could be a police, somebody who's involved in that, so that they can sympathize and, you know, and empathize with you and understand what it is that you're going through. So when they're giving you counseling, because they're going to be trained counselors on top of that, they can give you the proper counseling or whatever. Not like Dave said earlier, just refer you to some social worker or whatever your insurance is going to cover. So let's end it there, guys. I really appreciate you joining me.
Good topic today.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I'd like to kind of come back maybe another week or so and talk about Dave, about taking that break, because I think that it's such a deep concept that doesn't get done. I think there's a lot of reasons behind that, and I think it's good we come back. We'll talk about that another show. Everyone watching live on Facebook, I really appreciate it. Don't forget to leave some likes below. Just hit that like button, hit the heart button, or hit the frowny face button if you hate us. So either way, it's going to help out a little bit. All right, so I'll end it there, guys. As always, I am Jim Hoffman.
Josh Knapp.
Eve Brenner.
All right, everybody, stay safe.